Don't think just because you had a bad day or you lost money on a deal that you're a failure. You're only a failure if you give up. Get back up. These are forging lessons. And as you're doing this forging stuff, guys, don't lie. It's easier sometimes to get around something and just say, oh, nope, wasn't me. Guys, forge, dig deeper, be that person. Make sure your yes is yes and your no is no. If you did do something wrong, admit it and fix it. It could mean you lose money. It could mean that you lose a deal. But guys, you got to make sure you walk with integrity. And that's part of this forging process. I didn't say this stuff is easy. Building bridges isn't easy, but we're going to build a bridge that gets you across that river, and it means you're doing hard stuff. Welcome to 2025. This is the Kevin Dairaghi Show. I'm your host, Kevin Dairaghi. We are so excited that you guys are here. Because of your support, the Kevin Dairaghi Show now is in the top 10% of podcasts worldwide. This year, we expect to go even higher, but I need people like you to be able to like and share this with your friends. As of today, right, so recording this, many people have reached out in the socials, friends at kevindairaghi.com, and we hear some of your stories of how much this message is impacting you, which is fantastic, right? Many people have woken up from the steering wheel of life, right? You fall asleep and you get into the routine, but you kind of wake up and realize, hey, I do want to be a better parent. I do want to be a better spouse. I do want to look and feel better. And people have started taking more action, these little steps to become more successful at life. So guys, that is fantastic. And then even more impressive than that, this show has reached out to a couple people that were thinking about suicide and they have changed their mind. And as of right now, they're doing fantastic in their businesses and life, knowing that there's small steps that they can do to become better. But more importantly, listening to these 20 some odd guests so far and the troubles that they have faced and what they're currently facing lets people know that they're not alone, that their problem isn't just unique. Other people have the problems too, and we could work together in an open and honest relationship, right, that we could have. That's why we talk about this real life and real estate, right? There is so much that people struggle with. It's not just that fake face behind it, it's not just that fake front, it's the real person behind it. And they have good days and bad days, just like all of us, right? Nobody's perfect. And failure is only a failure if you stop. Right? If you lay down on the mat and tap out, that's when you do lose. Until then, just keep fighting because you're either learning or you're winning or learning. I think that's how the quote goes, right? So we're going to kick off 2025, the little history lesson. And guys, I love history because it helps me take something that's going on in my mind or how to explain things with a history lesson that kind of makes sense, right? It's the reason I love learning about this stuff because it helps me put things in a frame of reference. So we're going to start with a little conversation about Eads Bridge. And this is going to be a theme that we're going to talk about this year. And it's going to boil down to three main points. And it's going to be dream, forge, and finish. We still have our principles, right? Which is the most important. Real estate is between your ears. Your personal drives your professional, and it's all about relationships. Those are like foundational truths to this. What I'm going to be talking about is building bridges. And we do that through these steps, right? It's dream, forge, and finish. So here we go, and we'll get into this. So bridges throughout history, people think that the water brings people together, which it does. But the rivers, actually think about your states or your countries or different national, they usually stop at a river, right? So for us here in Missouri, we go up to the Mississippi River, and on the other side is Illinois. Think of your state, or you could be the same state, but a lot of the boundaries is a river, especially the big rivers, because that's where it's easy to get to. And then if you have a big rushing river, you can't easily get across it. It's an obstacle. It's hard. And what we're going to be talking about is making bridges, and bridges are hard. Right. So the Mississippi River here in St. Louis, when they constructed this Eads Bridge, we're talking about the end of 1800. So this is after the Civil War. Some new devices weren't always there yet. Railroads were just getting started, but we had all these roads and devices, and then it just kind of stopped and people took little ferry boats, which is not highly effective at all. right? The Mississippi River is over a mile long with a rushing current. Not quite the thing to just kind of stroll across as we do nowadays. So let me just give you a frame of reference. By the end of the 1800s, kind of up to this point, a lot of the main leaders have been politicians, right? Your George Washington, your Thomas Jefferson, your Andrew Jackson, your Alexander Hamilton, Abe Lincoln, right? Huge leaders that really did some big and impressive stuff. You know, Alexander Hamilton started the bank, right? Did all these cool things to help make the government actually work. Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase, which basically was a giant piece of this West talk that we're doing. You have to think in the beginning, the 13 counties west was the Appalachian Mountains. The 13 counties just kind of went across the Atlantic Ocean. So now St. Louis is the gateway to the West. West keeps moving and moving. One of my favorite presidents is James K. Polk, and he kind of he kind of summed up the essence of manifest destiny, which was a dream, right? This was the dream that we're going to be a nation from sea to shining sea, right? From the Atlantic to the Pacific. And each of these leaders that I just talked about had a part of that process of moving us west, but it was that dream that got the population interested in racing out there. The only problem is you'd get so close and then you'd have to switch to a ferry and kind of break down your riverboat to get across, your little wagon or whatever you were strolling around in. But for this manifest destiny, the Mississippi River wasn't a great connector. It was actually really hard. It was actually the obstacle of getting across. And it wasn't the politician getting people over anymore. After the assassination of Abe Lincoln, a lot of this, the power, the influence of the leaders actually came from entrepreneurship, right? It went from capitalism, from government to capitalism. So you might be this entrepreneur now on your own journey. You might recognize that it's kind of hard, but it was actually the railroad. It was a Pennsylvania railroad. The guy there is Tom Scott. And he was like, you know what? We're going to connect East and West. People are going there. It's not great, but we need to be the people to connect this so we could get goods and services and really work on the commercial side of it. So he actually took this dream and then started putting it down into practical terms. He hired some bridge makers, Keystone more specifically, to actually put this into motion. And that's where James Eads comes in. But just take a snapshot of this obstacle. So one, this is Mississippi River, where they're looking at the span is over a mile long, which is pretty long. It's going to be high enough so boat traffic could get underneath. So the boats at this time had the big steam decks, so they had to be tall enough where it wasn't getting hit by the boats. We're talking about 1874 at this time. So about 1 in 4 bridges fail, like they fall down because they didn't properly engineer it. In this case, the Mississippi River, there's a high current. So there's a lot of stuff going on underneath. So you got to make sure that you're going down deep enough, right? You need to have deep enough foundations and shore it up. And then also you have a live load for not only pedestrians walking across, but also trains. So that extra weight, that extra rattling, all that stuff. And at this time, the common building materials is stone, wood, and iron. So this is what people are building bridges with in the late 1800s. And that's why so many fail, and these are some serious obstacles that they had to do, but they had to figure out how to do it. And it was the capitalism, right? It was the railroads at this time that were saying, hey, we're going to solve this problem. And so they did come across it. So I brought up this dream that James K. Polk and the early politicians, and then to Tom Scott, that we're going to connect this. Let's talk about this in entrepreneur terms, right? Let's talk about this as us, right? So we're starting this year, 2025. What is your dream, right? Stephen Covey talks about begin with the end in mind. Walt Disney used the quote, if you could dream it, you could do it. And then, the quote that I use, that I developed was dream big and act accordingly. What is it that you want to do? Is there a business you're starting? Are you getting into real estate? Are you wanting to be a better parent, better friend? What is it that you want to do? Then start doing it. If you want a refresher of our life roadmap talk, go back to episode 5. We talked about the roadmap. Or if you want to do it more systematic, we have some courses over at kevindairaghi.com that you could either go through it with me, or you guys can just do it on your own with some friends. But guys, do the work, right? Wake up, start taking these actions to become successful at life. It's not always just the titles and money, but it's living fully and doing the things that you know and love. So, guys, think of this dream. And as you're listening to the rest of this, what are you dreaming about? What is that impossible thing like crossing the Mississippi, right? What is your dream? And then let's solve it. Because so much of this comes down to your mindset. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. That's Henry Ford. So as you go about this, like plug it in. And then just a fun fact there, 1 in 4 bridges fail, 1874. Well, also think about this. 3 out of 4 real estate agents fail in the first year. More agents actually fail going into second year as bridges fall, but just fun fact. All right, so we're 3 phases. So it's dream, forge, and finish. Now we're going to talk about forging. So forging, if you're not familiar, forging is the hard stuff, right? This is where we're going to start solving the obstacle, right? So in their case of crossing the river, with a fast current and the troubles that the Mississippi River had, they had to start building deeper foundations, right? They had to go down, they had to stop and actually stop the water and dig deeper into the river bottom so they could actually pour concrete and build the stone and start building up deeper and stronger foundations. The other part that they came across is iron. So wood only has certain spans, but iron has certain characteristics, and it was not strong enough to build a bridge with the spans that they needed for the Mississippi River, right? Because of the boat traffic, it couldn't span long enough. It would break and fall. And that's why they couldn't have all these different ribbings or basically all these foundations, is they had to keep the boat traffic going. So what they had to do is they had to learn how to forge iron into steel. So steel at this time was made, but it was so expensive to make that it was only used in a couple like little trinkets or like bobby pins, or like steel was barely around, but it was something that was there. Just not commonly used in mass production. So if you're not familiar, and guys, I am bringing down the process of how to make iron into steel, but just so we can understand and have this conversation. But the premise is you have to take this iron, you have to get it really hot, like really hot. So, it's the stuff that, Terminator melts in, right? That wasn't in the notes, but I figured I'd throw that in there. All right. So this is what like molten iron to get to steel is the first thing you have to do. You have to throw some stuff in. We call those additives. What actually those things do is bring all the impurities up to the top, and you scrape them off. Slag, or, you want to remove the impurities. And then once you do that, you basically do some strengthening with carbon and oxygen and stuff like this. But you have to get it really hot, take out the impurities and add in the additives. Put in good things and you take out bad stuff. And it sounds so simple when you say it. Well, it's got to get hot. You got to, take the bad stuff out and insert good things. So let's put this into our terms, right? And the best way I could do that is kind of telling you my story. So when I got into real estate, and I talked about this in my monologues, but I got into real estate, and we use the term solopreneur. I was doing everything, right? So I wore the marketing hat, I wore the money hat, I did the interviews, I did the construction, all these hats is what a solopreneur does. And it took me a little bit to get started because I didn't always have a partner or a friend or somebody always with me on this stuff, but I figured it out. But I was doing everything, which eventually started working, and it was fantastic until a personal thing happened, right? And in my case, it was my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I was one of the caregivers there. And you think that you could handle this stuff, and I could, but I'll tell you what, it drains me personally. I was there for his doctor appointments, for the chemo treatments, for the surgeries. I was there. I was a very present and active son. But what happened was my business melted, right? My personal side took over, and I wasn't there for my business, and it melted away. I wouldn't go back and change anything, but it's what happens. It's one of the pros and cons of being a solopreneur. With the loss of my dad, I went into this phase of just being down. I was broken, and my business kind of melted away. I tried to go back to corporate America. It just didn't fit. I just didn't fit. And it took me a couple years until I kind of found the right people and maybe just time that I bumped into some people, and I could be real estate even more, right? So if I thought buying one house was good, I could buy 2, I could buy 3, I could have crews, and we started working in volume. and I would speak and train and do all this stuff. And it was awesome until it wasn't. This is the phase that I went from doing, 10 rehabs a month. And then I started actually speaking and coaching people. And then part of that glutton phase is we were doing so well that eventually the company I was working with decided to change directions and I was no longer needed there. And the place that I felt like I put in all my fingerprints and I poured myself into that company and suddenly I wasn't there anymore. And I felt like I couldn't be me anymore because they had part of it. And I was lost. I mean, if we're being honest, I wasn't sure what to do. And it took some friends and people to kind of shake it off. Pro or con, I was also going into COVID, which everybody was going through a weird phase. So some of that was masked from some other people. But it was, if I'm a person that loves to hug you and I couldn't hug you, part of my identity is a little shaken, right? But through some friends and interactions, I could say I went from lost to being found. Today I get to be more me. I work my friends that like my recording people here at Doorward in our studio here at Dogaboni, the people in real estate, these are my friends. Like I actively hang out with them and do business and I love it. And I want you guys to be able to find that for yourselves as well. Like for me, my kids are growing up, but I'm still there to see them in the morning, go to all their sports games. I'm a more present father. I'm a more present husband. I have better and deeper friends now. Like all this, it wasn't easy, but it was like you learn how to do the work, right? You dig those deeper foundations. You become a stronger character, right? Take out the bad things, you add in the good things, and sometimes that's what we need is to understand this personal side. Going through all those deaths and loss of businesses and whatnot, you could say, hey, you're a failure, just give up. Or that's the part that actually goes through the forging thing. And that's the part where you really develop this character, right? Your sense of self. And my question to you as we're talking about this is, are you working on yourself? I'll just do a refresher here. When we talk about it's all about relationships, this is what we're talking about, your relationship with yourself, right? So are you reading, right? Are you working out? Are you working on yourself in this process, right? Are you doing the things that you need to do? And then making those into healthy habits, right? Little checkbox activities until they become a habit. Your relationship with others, like, are you being there for your family, for your friends, for your loved ones, right? Do you have a relationship with God? These are the relationships that we got to work on. So that's relationship with others. And the last one is your relationship with things. So things like your finances, your job. Are you feeling like you're stuck in a rut? Is your boss just a jerk and has no personal boundaries with you, right? These are things that you can come in and kind of adjust to make sure that you're living and working in a healthy and safe place. Your relationship with your future, that's your legacy. What are you doing to start building these things? Are you beginning with the end in mind so you understand that you're building the right train? Are you going through these forging moments? Are you just trying to take the easy ticket? You can't get from the east to the west in our train example here, in our bridge example, without doing the hard stuff, right? That's digging those deeper foundations. That's making iron into steel so you are strong enough to do it. If you are looking at building a business this year, make sure that you spend the time working on yourself because it's your healthy habits, which is those little things that are you giving up on yourself, right? Are you going to get up and take a walk even though it's cold or it could be raining? Are you still going out doing those things, right? These are the healthy habits that winners need to do. It's not giving up. And that's how you start becoming forged, right? Spinning and doing those healthy habits, working on your better self, because that's your future self that you're working on. And sometimes those downtimes is what makes you aware. And this is also the time that you need your coaches, your mentors, your role models, right? Whatever relationship you have with them, because sometimes you need to check in and let people know, hey, man, I'm not okay. Just make sure I'm okay. Go back to think of that Caleb Davis episode, right? Hey, man, I'm going through a strong point. Make sure you reach out to me. Like make sure people know that, hey, I need a little help right now. And that is okay. The fact that we could openly talk about this now is a big deal. Don't think just because you had a bad day or you lost money on a deal that you're a failure. You're only a failure if you give up. Get back up. These are forging lessons. And as you're doing this forging stuff, guys, don't lie. It's easier sometimes to get around something and just say, oh, nope, wasn't me. Guys, forge, dig deeper, be that person. Make sure your yes is yes and your no is no. If you did do something wrong, admit it and fix it. It could mean you lose money. It could mean that you lose a deal. But guys, you got to make sure you walk with integrity. And that's part of this forging process. I didn't say this stuff is easy. Building bridges isn't easy, but we're going to build a bridge that gets you across that river. And it means you're doing hard stuff, right? There is that part that is hard. All right. So here's our third version, our third step in this. We're dreaming, we're forging, and now we're finishing. Why are we finishing? Because a half-finished bridge does not get you across the river, right? You could start a little bit on one side, you could start a little bit on the other. But guys, until that's connected and it's done, it does not finish the bridge. It does not help you connect. Okay, so let's talk about that. It takes massive action. It means you got to do a lot of stuff, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be different. Once you become an entrepreneur, you jump into this world, there's something called SOP. We've talked about it in some of the episodes, but we call it shiny object syndrome. Once you're awoken to the idea of entrepreneurship, then you see business opportunities everywhere. All these different places you could make money, or, oh, I could just do this. It's my coach, Coach Chuck, talks about this, and he talks about shiny object syndrome as going in and fighting a dragon. And you're the knight, you got the armor, you got the sword, you did this stuff, and you're just going to walk in and have this big epic fight, right? Shield and sword, and you're going to slay the dragon, and then you get the princess and all this stuff. And so that's the dream of it, right? But the reality is you might get on your armor and your shield and your sword, but now you got to walk to where the dragon is. And you're not fighting the dragon right away, you're fighting the gnats. And the gnats in entrepreneurship, it could be like, what email are you going to use? What is your domain name? What is the business card going to look like? What about this? All these other mundane things that you're spending your time fighting gnats and not the dragon. And a lot of people get into that mix where you actually lost the drive, the finish, right? Fighting the dragon. Instead, you're fighting all these gnats, and you're just doing a lot of running in sands without much product, right? And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about finishing bridges. You got to get past all the gnats, focus on the stuff that's important, and then finish it, because a half-finished bridge doesn't get you there. So real estate guys, I love real estate. I buy houses, I flip houses, I'm an agent on houses. I'll be your agent if you want. I'll help you. I'll buy your house. I'll help sell you. Whatever, guys. I'm in real estate. This is what we do. It is this awesome tool, right? It's like the sword the knight uses. But understand how swords work is it's an incredibly powerful tool, but it could also consume you, right? It could help you do incredible amounts of work and slay dragons, but it also has the ability to take away your life, your friends, your business, all this other stuff behind you. So you got to make sure that you recognize that it is a tool, and to set some boundaries or parameters to what your entrepreneurship looks like, so that you're not taking all your family time away, that you're not taking all your friend time away, that you're not taking away the work on yourself time. These are all incredibly important for you to do to make sure that you could wield that sword correctly and powerfully. So let's talk about unfinished bridges here. So if you're getting into any business, but especially real estate, an unfinished bridge could be creating a marketing campaign, but never sending it off, right? Jeff Kaufman talked about that. He made this big campaign, but he never hit the send button. He was scared to do it. It could be talking about making bandit signs, but you actually never go out to hang them up, right? It could be talking about, man, I could have made that deal happen, but I never picked up the phone. These are unfinished bridges, right? Because you're not doing it. If you're not getting the contract signed, guess what? That bridge isn't done. You can't go to the title company next because you don't have a signed contract. It is all the stuff that is on your undo to-do list, right? It's not done. Those are the things that we need to finish to make sure that bridge is completed. So guys, as we think about this Dream Forge finish, I want you to really drive this into your brain this year. I want you to realize, what is it that you're trying to do? Okay, let's focus on that thing, right? That tunnel vision, focus on what that dream is. You're going to have to do hard stuff. Make sure you work on yourself during the way. Strongly recommend building healthy habits, right? Those little things to make sure you have the little wins every day. It could be working out, it could be reading, praying, right? Making sure you have the time for your loved ones. Like, this is the stuff that you have to do to make sure that you are strong enough to take on the tackles, right? Go on so you could take on the dragon. So this idea of crossing the river, Tom Scott hired Keystone fundamentally, and Keystone was his old protege. fellow guy that you might have known. His name is Andrew Carnegie. So Carnegie at this time was getting into construction and bridges, and he was Tom Scott's assistant in the railroads. But with especially Eads Bridge, Carnegie here learned how to make iron into steel, right? From a little bitty steel here and there to mass producing, right? It was expensive, especially at this time, it was incredibly expensive. But once he solved that problem, he crossed that obstacle, right? Making this iron into steel. He was able to create something that lasted until today. Actually, it's still being used for the Metrolink right now, Eads Bridge. But once he had this process of steel, he became known as the steel guy. Guess who uses steel? All the railroads, right? So he was able to go back to his mentor and basically sell a bunch of steel now for the railroads, right? For the trains, for the tracks, for all this stuff. So steel actually became massively popular, basically connecting East and West. All this idea of manifest destiny and dreams all got connected now because of Carnegie's time that he solved the steel problem. He didn't know he was doing that at the time. So basically he created this horizontal structure in America, and then what he did next was started building empires, right? He took that steel and went vertical, right? So all the skyscrapers that started popping up around this time was all because of the steel. They couldn't do it with what they were doing before. But the wood and stone buildings could only get up, 3-4 stories? That was it. That's what you could safely build a skyscraper with. And now with a building, I shouldn't say skyscrapers started because of the steel. They started structural steel. So all the cities now were being built. All this came down to Carnegie solving the iron to steel problem, right? Guys, it's mind-blowing. He built an empire after solving an obstacle, after having a problem. It wasn't all the easy things, right? It was solving the hard things. He went through his own forging process through this time. And I say this to you is like, what are you facing now? Your obstacle might be your chance to grow, right? To grow your empire, because once you learn how to solve it, now you have something that you could share with the world so that you could become that guy, that mentor, that role model to help. It could be your kids. It could be your family. It could be your legacy. It could be solving this obstacle for other people, right? So guys, what is it that you're facing that if you faced it, you could connect the bridges, right? That you could build your empire, you could build your skyscrapers. What is it that you need to grow on that can do all this stuff, right? What is these pivotal moments connecting the bridges, right? Connecting the shores where trains and boats and all this personal and professional growth. Guys, what is that obstacle? Because if we solve it, now you're doing so much bigger stuff. Right? You could become that person that you wanted to be, right? You're Kevin 2.0, you're Kevin 3.0, right? What is your empire that you're building? So guys, I've done this talk. I've shared this with you, and I just think as we start our 2025, let's go back to those basics here, because this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's by Teddy Roosevelt, another leader, right? He happened to do some amazing things, but it's so relevant to building bridges in the Eads Bridge. It is the man in the arena. And guys, as you listen to this, just think about it, right? This is the laying down on the mat. This is being in the fight. All right, so let's go. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who knows at best, in the end, the high triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Guys, let's make 2025, this new year, a year of victory. We only lose if we stay on the mat. Get up. Guess what? You're going to be dirty. You're going to be bloody. It's going to hurt, right? We're forging. We're doing stuff that we haven't done before. It's going to hurt. Guess what? We will know the victory of high achievement, right? We will be alive. You'll feel fantastic. You'll do stuff you never thought you'd be doing. You'll be meeting people that you never thought you could sit down and talk with. But there you are, striving valiantly. Guys, you will have days that kick you in the ribs and you're wanting to quit. Don't. Get up. Guys, get up and keep fighting, because it might be next month, next year, next day, tomorrow. Guys, you got to keep in the fight, because there's so much life to live. And at least while you're doing it, dare greatly, because people are going to see you, right? And if once you find the right people around you, they're going to be pushing you on to do bigger and better things. Guys, dream, forge, finish. If you want to go through the roadmap, go to our kevindairaghi.com, find it there. If you want to get some of our merch, we have some Eadsbridge merch. You can find it there. But guys, dream, forge, finish, and let's have a fantastic 2025. Love you guys. Talk soon.